Welcome everyone to this particular topic on Introduction to Python. So in this topic we are going to talk about what exactly is Python all about. Now some topics in which we are going to talk about over here is why Python, why we require Python here, applications of Python and Python installation, comments and literals. Indentation is also we are going to talk about, Python code execution, identifiers and variables, operators in the Python here. Then we are going to talk about conditional statements, loop statements. So these are something which we are going to talk about in this particular Python over here. So Python is a programming language which is something that everyone nowadays know that is getting more and more requirements and more popularity. So let's talk about one of the problem statements here and let's see that how we can decide that which one to utilize here. So Dave is here again. So we are just trying to ask him that which particular programming language we should be starting off, because if we need to start off as a particular developer, if we are fresh from the college and we want to understand, or if we are moving from some other profile to development, so we are talking about that which programming language we need to give more focus initially. So that's the real question here. Now Dave is recommending that Python is something which is best to start because of n number of features which is provided by the Python here. So let's talk about the different reasons that why we need to consider Python as a starter for the programming language here. So first point is that simplicity. Now Python is something which is very simple and straightforward. The syntax is not that much complex. So any particular person who is a beginner, who is a fresher, he can or understand and work on this programming language. So it's pretty straightforward and simple for him, and he will be able to pick up it and a lot of understanding he can do. He can go through the syntax, he can create some programs. So the learning wise is pretty easy and simple and straightforward. Second one, free and open source. Now this is one of the best feature because Python is completely free and open source in nature, which means that you can freely distribute the copies of this software. So you can create any kind of source code in this particular programming language. You can host it onto your servers. You don't require any kind of license. So you use into your local system, you use into your applications. So anywhere you can use it. So you get complete freedom around that. Third one is to support different programming paradigms. So there are some concepts like structure-oriented programming, object-oriented programming, procedure-oriented programming. So all these things are supported fully by the Python here. So it's not like typical scripting language or something like that where we don't have any kind of object-oriented or these kind of concepts. Yes, all these particular concepts are available there in the Python here. Now let's talk about some more points over here. Second one is that the platform independent. So Python is something which is platform independent. So you can install Python on pretty much any platform, whether it's a Unix based or Windows based, you can able to install it. Even Mac is also supported for Python. So you can deploy Python on any system, and then from there you can write the programs, you can run the programs, you can compile the programs. All that particular stuff you can do with the help of this particular Python here. So Python can be installed on any specific platform. It is also having support for the powerful and open source IDEs. So some of the IDEs like Jupyter, Eclipse, Anaconda, Atom, Spider, all these IDEs are having the support with programming there. So Python programming language is having the support with all these particular IDEs here. So you can use this IDE's environment in order to do the coding and in order to compile the source code and run the source code. So these are the interference which is provided by the particular different organizations to the developers so that they can interact with the Python programs and Python source code. Next one is that we have the support with a lot of other binaries and libraries here. So for different data analysis and different binaries and executables, you can have the support with Python here. So Python supports a lot of data analyzing tools and all, because primarily this tool is used more in case where we are doing some kind of data analysis. We are doing some kind of steps which is not being handled by the typical programming languages. So yes, all these third parties libraries are having the support for the particular Python here. So there is an extensive support for these particular libraries in Python. Now, who are basically using the Python? So what are the different organizations, or in fact you can say that what are the different applications which is using the Python here? So some of the most common or popular organizations are the YouTube, Google, Dropbox, Raspberry Pi, NASA, Netflix, Bitbucket, and National Security Agency NSA US is also using all these particular languages. So YouTube is using the Python to manage such a huge and such a high database of different videos. So they are using for different approaches, different automations, they are using the Python. Google is also storing a lot of web content and web pages there. So they are also pretty much using the particular Python here. Dropbox, Bitbucket, all these different organizations and applications in fact uses Python for their programming. Now in NASA you have seen that how many different scientific tasks they are performing, different data analysis they are doing. So in that case, Python is the key tool and the programming language which they are basically using, because it's pretty straightforward and lightweight. So you can pretty much use it for any kind of operations and any kind of data processing. So these are some of the organizations and the particular applications who basically uses the Python programming language for their programs and to host or to process the different applications, the GUIs, backend, front end, all those are supported in Python here. Now Python is not something which is there only in one or two stream. It can be implemented in a variety of particular profiles. So you can see that we are having travel, healthcare, sales, credit, insurance, banking, automation, social media, marketing, all these different streams. We have somehow some applications of Python here. Now why Python is having such a huge scope? Because of the simple fact that it's pretty easy to use, and a lot of people are actually feeling it much compatible and comfortable with this programming language, because they are beginner to this one. They don't want to have the heavy duty applications like Java, .NET and all. So they want to go with a simple straightforward programming language, and that is where Python is providing all the benefits to them. So Python they are using for different kind of streams here. So for sales applications, for the e-commerce, for the healthcare, for the banking, everywhere Python is being used. So it's not something which is being used in only the startups or in small organizations or the local automations. Pretty much in big applications also Python is something which is implemented. So it's having such a huge scope, and multiple industries are having the requirement for Python. So if one industry is not enough, then the next another industry is using or giving focus on the Python. All the major industries are basically using Python in some applications, in some automations. Now the Python is something which is quite a job trend right now. So if you go with some organizations like Indeed.com or other vendors or other organizations, so you will be seeing that there is a huge demand or huge increase in the Python related jobs. So you can see the particular screenshot here where we can see 123% change or increment, more than 100% increment in the number of jobs in the last 5 years. So at the same moment of time, you can see that Python and Java is something which is near to each other, the kind of a market share which we have right now here. So Python have increased from 8% to 18%, and whereas you can see the growth of Java is just 1% in last 5 years. So the growth of Java and these typical languages or these typical programming languages is not that much as compared to the Python. So Python is something which is getting more popular and more famous right now, because most of the DevOps engineer or those persons which is not coming from the development background, they are actually feeling more comfortable with Python. That is the reason why we are seeing such a huge popularity and implementation of this particular skill set here. So yes, if you are looking forward for a Python skill set, so this is the right time for you, because of the fact that there is a huge demand in the particular market here. Now Python installation, like we said, can be done on any platform. So you can download the exe file, you can download it onto the Mac operating system, you can download it into the particular Ubuntu or CentOS, all these platforms using apt or yum executables. So all that support is available there. So let's see that how we can install it with the exe file. So you can go to the Python website, and there you can click on the downloads, where you will be able to see that which particular operating system you want to download and what is the current version. So 3.7.4 is the current version which is supported, and which is the latest one here. So we were having earlier 2.7 version also, but that is something which is going to be obsolete in near future. So 3.7 or 3.6 above is the latest ones which we have in the market. Now once you access the downloads page, So there you will be able to download the particular exe file. Once the exe file is downloaded, you will be able to double click on that and proceed with the installation. So whether you want to do the customization, you can do that. Otherwise, the basic installation will perform. You can also have the addition of these executables to the path variable, so that whenever you run the Python command, it should be automatically picked up and you will be able to execute it. So that is important, that you deploy whatever the binaries you are deploying, that should be automatically added up to the path variable, so that any moment of time you want to run the Python executable, so you don't have to execute it with the full path or full file name here. Now once the installation is proceeded further, so it will take some time for performing the installation, because it will install a lot of packages and executables and all. Once the installation is done, then a pretty much straightforward command like python ---- version will let you know that which particular Python version you are using. And once that is done, so you can pretty much run any specific 3.7 hour Python script with the help of the command here. So this is the process which we are basically performing, and the whole purpose of this installation is that so that we can run or we can develop the programs locally here. If we are using Eclipse and all those IDEs, so we have to install the plugins appropriately and according to that, and then only we will be able to proceed or we will be able to perform this activity. So this one will help us to understand that yes, the Python executable is installed, and now whatever the program you want to run, you will be able to run that. So in order to run the Python programs and Python statements, you have two options. One is like to access the Python CLI, and second one is to put up the source code in a Python file, .py file, and then execute that Python file. But in this one, we are basically running the Python executable. The moment you do the Python here, so what will happen that you will go into the interactive mode or interactive environment. Now this is something which is provided by the particular Python here, so that we can run some basic commands and all that stuff. So if we want to have the interactive sessions, so that is where we can run Python, and whatever the statement you will provide here, that will be executed, but it will not be stored somewhere. So it will be lost once you come out of that. So yes, if you want to execute some particular steps or you want to run that, you can always do that with the help of this particular executable. So Python executable should be able to let you to type the commands, to execute the commands, and whatever the statements you are running, you will be able to run that one. What are the key components and what are the key different things we need to consider here? So let's go ahead one by one here. The first thing which we have over here is the comments and literals. Now first, comments is a kind of a text which we put into the source code, and the only benefit of using the comments is that if we want to understand, if we want to give some comments that okay, what is the purpose of this piece of source code, or I want to make the particular source code such a easy to read so that any new person can come up and understand that what this particular logic or this particular loop or anything is all about. So you use an hash in front of the comment in order to make it as a comment there. So these strings which you put up into the comments is not executed during the execution. So if during the debugging, if you want to commit, if you want to disable some piece of source code, you can always have a hash in front of that, so that that particular content or that particular piece of code will become a comment here. Now if you want to have multiple commits, so in that case you can use the particular triple quoted strings over here. So this will help you to use the particular multiple lines commits here. You can have the multiple hash also in the multiple lines, but that will not look good to you. So if you want to have the multiple lines commit, so you can always use this triple quotes strings over here, and then you can put up your particular code like it's mentioned in the screenshot. So these two kind of commits you can provide. You can use the single line or you can use multiple lines. So it all depends on you which particular line you want to refer here. Next thing is the literals here. Now any number or character or a set of characters is known as the literal constants. So these we use during the particular programming language, during the Python codes. So at any moment of time you want to use the literals, you will be able to use that. So these two type of components are available there. Now next thing which we have over here is the indentation. Now indentation is very important in Python because here we don't have those typical things like curly brackets, square brackets or something like that we have in the Python or in the Java programming language, .NET or any other programming language. So here we are using the indentation. Now indentation over here, we don't use any braces or to indicate what is the block of the code here for providing the loops. All those things are not possible here in Python. So in Python, the block of codes are referred by the line indentation. For example, if you want to run some if loop and you want to put some comments or some piece of source code or block of code in the if loop, so in that case you have to give one more indent as compared to if loop here. So this ensures that you are running a particular subcode inside a particular loop or inside a particular conditional statement here. So the number of spaces in the indentation is variable, but the problem is that this is very important. If you miss out or if you put any kind of indentation in a wrong amount or in a wrong way, the whole program will have a compilation errors. So that is something which you need to make sure that whenever you are putting up the indentation, it should always be there in a proper amount there. If the proper amount is not there, then definitely we will be getting the compilation issues and we will not be able to run our particular program. So indentation is very important because it can impact the overall program if you don't provide the same amount of space or the indentation here. Also, leading white space at the beginning of a particular line of source code is used to compute the indentation. If it is like if you want to identify that what are the piece of source code running together, so that you can identify with the particular white space or the indentation. So if you feel that some 5-6 statements should be running together at the same level, then all of them should be having the same kind of particular spacing there. So these things you need to understand because indentation is something which really helps you to arrange the overall source code. If these indentations are not available, we will not be able to arrange our source code. We will not be able to see or format our particular Python source code. So proper formatting can only be done when we have the proper indentation in place. So that is the reason why it's quite complex and it's quite important that we use the proper indentation over here. Now, how we can run the Python source code? The Python source code execution is also important because what exactly it happens in the backend? Because from the ID, we are just putting up the source code in the high level language or the human readable format. Now, how it's getting converted at the processor level, how it's getting executed, how the system calls is done. So let's talk about the process here. Now you write the source code in a particular structure way in a .py file, which is either created manually with the Notepad++ or with the IDs or something like that. You can also create using the VI or Nano editor on the Linux server. So once the Python script is created, so it's in a kind of a file which is having the structure source code in a high level language which is readable by the human. Now this particular source code is converted into the bytecode. This bytecode is something which machine understands, so that is the reason why it's converted. But this conversion is not done by us, it's done by the compiler. So the compiler is something which is converting this particular piece of source code to a machine readable format so that we can run it, we can execute it. Now we have a PVM which is installed onto the Python environment. When you do the Python installation, so this is also installed. Now this is the kind of a virtual environment where actually the bytecode gets executed. So the compiler compiles the source code and generates the bytecode, and in order to run the bytecode we got the PVM over here. Like in case of Java, we have JVM known as Java Virtual Machine. So here also we use the Python virtual machine here, which is used to execute this bytecode. So whatever the bytecode we are generating over here, so that is something which is getting executed with the help of PVM known as Python virtual machine here. So once the source code is particularly executed, the same bytecode is generated as a response, and that bytecode is converted into the human readable format, and you get an output whenever you run the Python code. So this whole migration and the conversion is happening in the background, so that whatever the source code you are writing, that will be compiled and that will be executed onto the particular virtual machine. So this is the overall mechanism which is happening into the background. Now if you want to create a simple hello world program just to have a flow that what exactly it really happens, in this case we are using the print statement, and double quotes and single quotes we are putting some screens. So here the single quotes and double quotes, both of them represents the strings only. So you can use the print statements in order to have some string like hello world, welcome to Edureka. So what will happen that when we run this particular program, we will convert this program into any kind of py file. So in this case we have converted into or saved it into the new.py here. Now when you run this new.py, so definitely it's converted into the bytecode. Once the bytecode is executed in Python virtual machine, you get a response of these particular screens on the screen. So you will get 2 lines printed on the screen One is the hello world and one is the welcome to Edureka. So these two different lines are something which we get executed onto the screen. So this is the way that how you can create a simple hello world program, and once you run this particular Python file, you will get the response on the screen. From the response you can identify that yes, the source code is executed and you have got the end result. So this is a simple straightforward print statements which is printing whatever the statements mentioned in this single quotes and the double quotes here. So this is the overall execution of the hello world program over here. Now next thing which we have over here is the identifiers. Now an identifier is a name which is used to identify a variable, function name or class, module or other objects. So identifier names is used to identify a specific object or a resource in a Python's programming language. So it can start with the letter, capital, higher-case, lowercase, uppercase, all of them are allowed. You can also start with an underscore. You can have the digits, underscores, all these things are available there. You can use them in the particular identifiers. So these are something which will use to identify. For example, you want to create a particular class, function, all these things are used to identify these particular resources. Python is case sensitive, so you have to worry about the uppercase and lowercase also. So it's not something that like Windows where the uppercase and lowercase can be executed in the same way. You have to be very gentle with the particular uppercase or the case sensitivity of these strings here. So uppercase A and lowercase a is two different variables in case of Python. So Python does not allow special characters like @, hash, particulars, dollar, percentage, all these things are not allowed in the particular identifiers. So special characters are definitely not allowed here. So that was the identifiers. The next thing is the variables. Now variables are the reserved locations which store certain value. So the whole purpose of using the variables is that you are actually trying to store some value. So without variables, no programming language can work, because at any moment of time you want to store some values temporarily, you want to do some processing. All that stuff can only be taken care with the help of variables. So whenever you create a variable, you reserve some memory or some space into the memory here. Now in this screen you can see that we are using a particular variable called a is equal to 16, which is something trying to provide us that yes, a particular variable is created with the name a and the value is 16. So we use the id function over here, which provides a unique identity of an object. So that is something which we are getting because it's kind of a memory unit. It's a kind of a unique number which is allocated to each and every variable. So in this case you are saying that whenever we do id of a variable, so we get random number. So we are getting the different number for 16, 20, Edureka and 12.22. So all these things are the different variables which we are using, and using the id function we can actually see, or we can understand also, that each of these variables are in fact used to be stored, or these are stored on a different memory units or different memory locations. So id function will help you to understand that yes, whenever you create a function, it reserves some space into the memory, and that memory is used to store the value or hold the value of that particular variable. So this is the purpose of using the variables in the Python programming language. Here also you can see that we are trying to implement, or we are trying to print both the a and b values. So if we want to, we have assigned the value a as 10 and b as Edureka, and when we are trying to print it up, so using the print statement we are printing up both the values 10 and Edureka over here on the output window. So variables are used to store a value, and then we can actually use the print statements or any other particular statement in the Python code to get the value of that variable. And once the value is particular fetched here, I have used a simple print statement to print that value onto the screen, onto the output window. So you assign the value and then you can easily fetch that value and you can print it up onto the screen also here. So these are some of the ways that how we can interact with the variables. You can store a value, or you can extract or fetch a value from a variable also here. So operators in Python. So operators is something which performs the various kind of operations on the operands. So operands are the actual variables or the values on which we are trying to perform some operation. So for example, if you are trying to do like 2 plus 3, which is equivalent to 5. So here 2 and 3 are the operands on which a operation is happening. And plus or additional symbol over here is known as operator here. So there are different kind of operators which is available there. So let's talk about that. First one is the arithmetic. Now in case of arithmetic, we have different kind of operators like plus, minus, division, multiplication, modulo, we have a double star also there. Then we have assignment operators. In there we have like equals to, double equals to, plus equals to, minus equals to, multiply equals to, divide equals to. So all these things are there from the assignment perspective, that how we are performing the assignment and all. Then comparison, greater than, less than, not equal to, all these things. Then logical and or is also available. Bitwise, identity, membership, all these are the different kind of operators which we can use either on the core values or we can use on the various variables. So these, depending on the particular operators which we use, we can perform some desired operations, and that helps us to understand that what exactly we are trying to perform or we are trying to execute over here. So that's the real purpose, that why we require operators while preparing the Python programs over here. So next we have conditional statements. Now conditional statements are used in which we can actually see how to behave depending on a particular condition. So certain steps or certain block of code if you want to execute, but before that you want to have a condition check that this block of code should be executed in a specific condition. Now if that condition is satisfied, then only the conditional block or the block of code will be executed. So on the right hand side you can see here that there is a flow diagram which is available there, in which we have a condition. If a condition is true, then the conditional block of code is getting executed. If the condition is false, then the whole block will be simply skipped. So it's kind of a true and false kind of a situation, where if the situation is true, we are proceeding. If in case the situation is false, if the result is false, we are just coming out of that. So this is the reason why we need to use this particular component over here. Now there are different kind of conditional statements which we can have over here. We have if, else if, and else here. So depending on your requirement and depending on your conditions, you can actually explore that which particular statements, which particular conditional statements you want to proceed, you want to use over here in this one. Now in this particular flow diagram, you can see here that we are basically starting off particular conditions here. So we are saying that if particular x is less than y, where we are using a comparison operator here. So if x is less than y, so if this situation is true, then statement A is executing. If this is something in which we are trying to have multiple if-else statements, because if you are not going to execute only one condition, you have to check further conditions. Like if something is true, then you are executing something. But again, if some statement or some condition is false, in that situation, again, if you want to have a if-else kind of situation where you want to further check that in case this situation or this particular value is false, you want to further check or you want to further validate some other values so that you can take a better decision. So in that case, we have the if-else particular statements over here. But this becomes so much complex. On top of that, you have the indentation also there. So yes, you have to properly work on these loops, because you may get confused that which particular loop is ending at which particular location. So indentation is proper in working with the multiple if-else, because if the indentation is not proper, you may have multiple loops, but again all of them will not work properly and it will cause a lot of problem for you. So this is something which you need to keep in mind while working on these different if-else statements all together in a single particular program. So let's talk about the example over here. So on the left side we have the syntax and on the right side we have the example here. So on the left side you can see that we have a condition 1, and if it is success, if it is true, then some conditions and some statements are executed onto the system. But if we say that we want to have in the else part again another condition to be checked, that yes, if the condition 1 is not true, again the particular else part will be executed. But again in the else part we are having an else if to check if the condition 2 is true, then statements will be executed. Otherwise we are going with the else part here. So in this one, at the second level, we are not closing it off simple if-else statements here. We are further checking another condition over here, that in case the particular false or if the else part is executed, then further we are trying to validate a condition and trying to check the situation that what exactly is happening over here. So this is how the if-else really works, in order to understand that how the overall process, how the different values, conditions and all that stuff is validated. And on the right hand side, let's go ahead with the example here. So we have a value of x as 10 and y value as 12. Now in this one we are checking that if x is less than y, then we are saying that x is less than y. But we are also checking that if the particular x is greater than y, so x is greater than y. And if this situation is not happening, then we are saying that yes, x and y is equal here. Now I can easily remove the second loop and I can say x is greater than y, but this does not work in that same way. So instead of having the assumption that either x can be less than y or it can be greater than y, here we are trying to put up a third logic or third statement where we are checking out, where we are validating that both values should not be equals to each other. So in case the particular value is x is equal to y, the first loop, the else if, both will fail and the third statement will be executed. So this is the exact situation where we feel that if condition 1 is not true, condition 2 is not true, then we are going with the condition 3 here. So this gives us a better relation and a better decision in understanding that what exactly the end result should be there. So in order to have an effective decision, this is the way that how we are proceeding with different statements. Now those was the if, else, and those are just the conditional loops where either a value can be true or value can be false here. But there are certain times where we need to have multiple values, multiple statements executed. So in that case we use a loop statement which allows us to execute a particular statement or a group of statements multiple times. It's just kind of a loop, like where we have a starting and end point here. So it will start it will begin from the first value and it will go till the last value here. So there are different kind of loops here which are available in the Python programming. So we have while, for, and nested loop here. So if conditions are something which you have seen that you can have only one or two values, at max you can go for else if and you can have more values there. But if you want to go for kind of a list where you have a list of an items or a values and you want to pick up each and every value one by one, or you want to go into a sequence order, so that is where the for, while, nested, all these statements really help you in that particular way. So for statement is there. For example, you can want to go for a particular array processing. So in that case, for loop is used. Similarly, while loop is used in case you want to run certain steps or certain particular tasks you want to run depending on a condition. So there we are using the while loop. And similar, we have the nested loop for having an iteration of a series of values. So these are basically used in case you're not going for a condition check or a Boolean parameter. If you want to go for an iterative task, so there we can use these kind of different loops here. Now let's talk about each of these components one by one. So while loops keep an iteration of iterating a statement or a particular block until a certain condition is met. So in this one we basically use an expression or a statement. So if that particular statement is fulfilled, that is the situation where the while loop will stop. So if you want to run, if you want to print some 20, 30, these kind of values all together in a particular loop, so that is where we can easily use this while statement. So let's see the particular flow diagram here. So we will start here, and depending on the while situation or condition, we will see that what really happens. If the condition is true, if for any reason that the condition is not met yet and the condition is still true here, so what will happen that a set of statements or a kind of a block of code is executed, and it will keep on executing unless and until the situation or the condition is false. This whole block will keep on executing there. Now once the condition is false and the condition is met, then it will completely come out of the particular loop here and the while loop will be break down over there. So this is the way that how we can run certain set of commands and statements over the period of time again and again, depending on a particular condition is satisfied or not. So that is the purpose of using this particular syntax here. So here you can see that we are having an example of while loop. So we are making a variable called count over here and the value is 0. Now we know that we have to use a particular condition here. So we are using a condition that the value of count should be less than 5. Now particular count will start from 0 and it will go for less than 5 over here. Once the value of count is 5, that is the time where the code will break and the while loop will stop. So you can see here that we are also printing the count over here. so that we can understand that what is the value processed inside the particular while loop. And then we are also incrementing the value of count, because if we don't do that, our particular while loop will always be stuck there and it will become an infinite loop. So if you want to increase or increment or go to the next value, that is the reason why we are incrementing the value of count with 1, so that we can increment our value of count and that the condition which we are using in while should be satisfied. So here in the output you can see that you are getting the value called 0, 1, 2, 3 and 4. Once the value of count is 5, then it will again check the statement, and that is where this statement will fail. And once the statement is failed on, it will come out of the loop and it will go with the next statement. And the next statement which was there is the print statement, in which we were using the goodbye over there. And this is the way that how it comes out of the loop and proceeded with the rest of the source code here. So this syntax is something which we can use according to your requirement. You can modify it according to the statements, variables, all these things you can use and make it as according to your particular requirements. Now for loop is something which again is used to execute a block of statement, and it is basically depending on a particular range of a particular value. So in this one we give a list of values, and this for loop will pick up each and every value of those lists and process accordingly. So it will execute the statement once the particular sequence is done. Once the items are processed, it will come out of the loop automatically. So it will go for first value and will go to the end of the particular list over here. So you will use particular range of items or values over here, and for loop will pick up each and every particular item of this particular list, process it, and then come out of this particular loop once the list is processed completely. So let's see an example on this one. So in this one, let's talk about the first example here. We are using a particular syntax here called for. I is something which we are using as a temporary variable, in which each and every value will be picked up and stored temporarily. And we can use this I variable in order to use in the printing and the statements and block code over there. So in this one, we are giving the range from 1 to 5. So for loop will go from 1 to 5 there, and it will print the content. So it processes 1, 2, 3 and 4, and that is where it got stopped there. So this is where you will be able to see that we are printing the I value also, and all those particular statements will be executed one by one till the particular list is over. It comes out of the loop and it stops execution. Now second example also is there, where we are using the particular range in a decreasing order. So we are giving that we need to go with the 5 as an first initial value, and 1 is the ending value, and also we are specifying that yes, you have to decrement the values over there for the execution. Normally for loops goes for the increment order when we are using the range feature, but over here we need to specify that you need to go one step down, or you need to use decrement in order to move with the particular array. So that is the reason why the third parameter we are using called -1, which shows that yes, you have to decrement each and every value 1 over here and then print the particular statements. And that is the reason why we have got the particular statements like welcome to loop for loop 5, welcome to for loop 4 and 3 and 2, and the same order over here. So this is the for loop which will run on a particular range of values, process them one by one, and then print it or process it, or whatever the statements you perform or you code, according to that the value will be picked up. So we also have a for else particular concept here. Now when a for loop successfully executes without any break statement or without any kind of error, then the else block attached with the particular for loop also gets executed. But if for loop encounters some break during the iteration, then the else part will not be executed. So this is the reason that why we use this particular statement here. So you have some particular examples over here. So let's see that how it works. Now you have a particular for loop here in which we are going for the range 1 to 5, which means that we will be getting the values from 1 to 4 over here like the previous example. Now in this case we are saying that if the particular value of I is greater than or equal to 5, then it should perform a break. And we know that if any break statement is executed inside the for loop, then the else part will not execute. But this will not happen on the left side of example over here, because of the simple fact that the I value will not go above 4 over here. So it will not go either to 5 value or more than 5. So that is the reason why that if statement will not be executed and the else part will simply execute there. And that is the reason in the output you will see the else part printed. But on the right hand side, it's saying that if the value of I is greater than or equal to 4, which is actually happening because of the fact that 4 value is getting incremented, and in the range between 1 to 5, we are getting the values like 1, 2, 3 and 4. Till 4 we are getting. So definitely that if statement is executing there, and it basically did a break on the for loop there. And that is the reason why we don't see any else part executed in that loop. So if the breaking point or any break statement is executed inside the for loop, that is where the else statement will not be executed. So this is the scenario. If you want to have an execution of else part, then that particular condition, or there should not be any kind of break statement inside the for loop. And if something happening, if a break statement is coming up in the for loop, that is where you can see here that the else part will simply skipped and it will not be executed. So that's it for this particular lesson. I hope you liked it. Thanks.